Welcome to another edition of the show with no name, where I'm cleaning up the coffee. I'm Bob Going with Jim Nikosha. Gavin's running a little late today. We don't know whether he's coming or not, but when he does, he's going to sit right here. His orange juice is ready for him in case he's watching at home, which he isn't because we're not doing this live. Anyway, this is, what did I say? Did I say this is a show with no name?
Yes, you
What's
did.
the date today? May 4th? Yes.
It's the 4th?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Friday.
It is because Charlie Crable said, "May the 4th be with you" today.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All I know is Friday.
I don't know if his newspaper was as funny as his rock comments. Anyway. Well, let's see. The news this week is how did we miss this? How did we miss the fact that the May was approaching? Here comes Gavin. May was approaching. The city has no budget. Not only no budget, but they haven't even started working on it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Now,
well, didn't we mention it briefly last week?
Well, no, I don't think so. No, because I was shocked when I saw Bill Will's letter to the editor and realized that I missed this entirely. That's the dog, by the way. He's greeting Gavin. Just come on in, Gavin. We just started. Okay. I got your orange juice for you.
Morning, Gavin.
And we're just mentioning the lack of a city budget. Now, my recollection is that the way we set it up, I don't have all the details in front of me, but the way we set it up is that the department heads are supposed to give the controller their budget requests in either January or February, right? And there's supposed to be it's not exactly a preliminary budget. It's
a working budget.
A working budget.
A working budget.
A working budget and then the Common Council and the mayor and the controller sitting as the budget board then sit down and review it. None of that is, well, I don't know if none of it has happened. I don't know whether or not the department heads submitted theirs. I'm assuming they did.
I don't think they did. Because if I recall at the meeting the other night, and I'm probably wrong, but
well, that's all right. That's all right. You know, we make this stuff up as we go along.
I've been wrong before. He said that the department heads didn't give them their budget yet. I thought he said that.
Is that right? I didn't watch the meeting. I think there was a volume on or something.
They're a wee bit behind being where they're supposed to be.
Just a little bit.
Well, they were supposed to have adopted the preliminary budget by this time and have a public hearing in 2 weeks. And it used to take, and remember how they were all going to dedicate all this time and go over it line by line and all that stuff? They haven't looked at anything.
Tell you what phonies they are. The last budget, they had several things that they were going to do to make this budget easier.
Right.
And each one of them, I didn't see, a couple of them said that they had specific things they were going to, nothing has been done.
Well, let's all talk.
This is the most dysfunctional budget council that
Was the budget that screwed up from November when there was nobody in there that you can't get it sorted out?
Look, the budget items are pretty much the same from year to year. Even if the controller was not doing his duty, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but even if, there's still things they can do. They can still meet with the department heads and discuss
how much money you're going to need.
But instead, they're all comfortable just pointing fingers at each other.
The department heads can submit their budget to whoever they want.
Well, that's right. That's right. They've submitted it to the controller. If the controller then doesn't hand it to the council and the mayor, well, then just get it from the department heads.
Exactly.
At least work on something. They've done nothing. Now, under the charter, the mayor is the chairman of the budget review board, and the mayor is supposed to be calling the meetings, and they're supposed to be doing something.
Exactly.
And they've done absolutely nothing, and they waited until Bill Wills puts a letter to the editor in before even commenting on it, which I think is absurd. Well,
I wasn't particularly happy with the editorial from the newspaper the other day about the budget.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
It was pretty scathing, and they blamed. Did they blame everything on the new controller?
Yeah.
He made statements at the beginning of the year, or when he took office.
Right.
And the recorder says nothing was done. Then at the end of the editorial, they had another comment. And, you know, they blamed everything on the present controller. And the radio show the other day, they want to invite Heather Reneke to the show to defend herself against the controller.
Well, you know what? She's got no defense, so she's gone, and we're done with that.
Yeah.
All she can say, all she can do is point her finger at somebody else and say it's
And that's
because
what
the other
she's doing.
person quit.
And that's what she's doing.
Yeah, and that's no excuse. You're the controller, you're responsible, and I say that about her, and I say that about him.
Well, he said
But, having said that, as I started out, however, you know, let's assuming he's irresponsible, or let's assume that he doesn't know what he's doing, or let's assume that that it's an overwhelming task given what he's got to work with. It doesn't matter. The others should have been doing something.
Yeah. What he's asking for from the department heads is when they have a budget line item,
Yeah.
he wants to know what is in that line item.
What's it for?
So
Let's have some
he wants
notes.
justification.
He
Right.
wants to know what it's for.
And everybody should want to know that too. However,
It
let's
doesn't
start
get
with
done
that.
because when I was on the council, back when,
Way
back.
in the olden days,
In the olden
years ago.
Before now.
that I used to ask what was in the contractual line item.
Yeah.
And they said it was miscellaneous. I said, well,
Mrs. Who?
Yeah. I said, that's not contractual. I said, that's just a category where they threw a lot of money
Right.
just in case something happened.
Right.
I said, I want to know what the hell they are.
Right. What are the contracts? What
Yeah.
contracts are we
They
talking
weren't
about?
contracts.
Right.
They're not contracts.
All it is yet another way to hide money in the
Hide
budget.
money, exactly. The way we found a couple times.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You know, you have contingency line items. You have unallocated fund balance, and then you have these phony items which make up numbers for contracts that don't exist.
Yeah, we had the one line item in the,
There's quite an echo where I'm sitting right now. I don't know if you're hearing it, but it's
little
coming
bit.
back. It's coming back to me.
I think it was in the water department line item. We asked the controller at the time, what was that money from? $300,000. Where'd that? Oh, that was a repayment for a CHIPS program that we did. We did the CHIPS program. They reimbursed us instead of paying it off. They hid that money in the
Yeah.
line so that they had money to
Right.
screw up
Right. In other words, they were borrowing money
and not paying it
and
off.
not paying it back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Well, that's what they did.
Yeah,
They
right, and not
borrowed the
paying it
money
back.
and they were going to pay it back when they got the CHIPS money, but they
Right.
didn't. They just put it in another account.
Right.
And
Right.
for how many
And-
years did that happen?
And years later, if there's a state budget, they'll chastise them for that, and they would promise not to do it again. Then we do it again, and nothing happens.
Yeah. That's the way it goes.
I'm afraid they're going to find there's a lot of line items like that. I mean, we don't even know what we borrowed money for.
No. How many times did we borrow money for a project that we were going to be reimbursed for?
Right.
They get reimbursed, and the money goes in the general fund instead of paying for the.
Because that builds
Or-
your budget to build from for the next year.
Or the project never happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think may have happened in that West End project. I know we said we were going to borrow the money for it. Whether we actually did or not, I don't know. But it comes to mind, and then the West End project never happened. There was down here on Northampton Road.
Exactly. Right.
We found one of those years and years and years ago. There had been we had borrowed some money for that project to fix the underground pipeline. There's a creek that runs behind the houses on Lower Northampton Road, underneath Teckler or next to Teckler's building, all the way down to West Main Street, where it finally comes out of a pipe just before the arterial at Clinton Street. And that had been a running stream at one time, but somewhere along the line, like in the 20s, they made concrete what do you call those?
Culverts.
Concrete culverts that ran down there, and they covered it up. So people got bigger backyards, and well, they started to collapse after a period of time. And we had money, borrowed money for that project, and it never happened for 10 years, something like that. And then there came a point where we got a grant to do the rest, and that money was still sitting there. And I remember the controller telling me, because we needed some extra money to deal with getting access to the property, and there was a collapsing garage down there and stuff, that was built over the thing, and it was not clear who was responsible for what. Well, we got the money for that because everybody's forgotten that this $60,000 is there.
You just keep building and building.
Yeah. So that's it. And Lord knows that was just a little piddling thing, $60,000. But they borrow them. They just go through these routines of borrowing money, borrowing.
They just borrowed some money for a couple projects, and one of the projects they borrowed money for is to fixing the Dove Creek retaining walls.
Right. And then decided not to do it.
Yeah.
Which
they shouldn't be doing anyway.
Which is arguably they shouldn't be doing anyway. But then they use that money to spend $100,000 on the docks down there for to keep the restaurant open. That gives us $300 a year. Yeah. And now they just borrowed more money to build a dance floor down there. That's going to give us zero income.
The original docks were something like $20,000, and now the new ones are $100,000.
Which we may or may not be reimbursed for, and I'll bet you when we get reimbursed for it, the money's not going to go in to pay off the Dove Creek loan.
Well, I think they said it was going to be reimbursed. I think
it may be. There may be some FEMA money coming in, but there may not be because FEMA's tapped out. Look at those people down in Schoharie County. I mean, we should be getting money for the docks when these people down there haven't got their homes.
They haven't got their homes yet.
The best laid plans of mice and men. They will go astray.
They sure will.
Who said that?
Who wrote it? Steinbeck?
I don't know. Well,
Mice and Men.
He wrote of Mice and Men, but I think the
quote's from someplace
quote precedes it.
I don't know.
Sounds Shakespearean, but it might not be. Everything sounds Shakespearean.
So the city budget is non-existent, and they still.
And by June 1st, I mean, if they don't have the final budget adopted by June 1st, they won't be able to get the tax bills out. The tax bills may not be out till September or October the way they're going.
Yeah. Well,
they don't care.
Well, if they send them out late, you don't pay them till late. They still have to give you the extra time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
and they've done that before too.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
It's just the sheer overall incompetence, and as you said, the whole budget board is to blame.
Exactly.
The whole board.
Yes. Put insist on it. Insist on it. Call the department head and say, "Where's your budget? I want to see your budget." Since each alderman is on the committee, they have the right to ask for the budget from each department head.
But you have to know what you're doing to ask the right questions. So therefore, either they're willfully not doing it, or they don't know what they're doing.
Well, everybody's relying on somebody else to tell them what to do. That's it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we can't do anything because the controller hasn't told us what to do. Well, you know what? Do your job, or get out, as Michael would say.
Yeah.
I saw Michael this week.
I did too.
Did you?
Yes, I did. I saw him down at the public hearing for the school.
Yeah. Did he speak?
Yes, he did.
Did he? I didn't see any picture in the paper of him pointing his finger at anybody.
No,
I saw him sitting though.
He was there. They showed Curtis speaking, but Mike spoke. He spoke.
I must have missed half the newspapers this week. I missed. I don't know where.
He didn't point. He didn't point. He was restrained.
Well,
I've got that old picture in my office of him.
He's a public official now. He's got to be careful.
Show some decorum.
Yeah, he was there along with 6 other people.
Wow.
That's all that showed up. And two of the people were running for the board, and so there's.
Was that you?
I was there.
Did you speak?
And I asked a question because originally the district was told that their budget exceeded the cap.
Really?
Yes. And Kim Brumley didn't understand how that could be because of where the numbers came out. So they did some investigation. They said, "Oh, yes, you're right because you're using so much money to pay off debt service. They're paying off an old loan, so that didn't count against them."
Well,
So
wait a minute. If it exceeded the cap, you mean the taxes are going up regardless of the $2 million they just got?
No.
Well, then how could it exceed the cap under any circumstances?
The increase in their budget. It's so anyhow, it worked out. They don't. And my question was, did the state give that to you in writing? And they said, yes, we have it in writing. I said,
all right, well, that's good.
Because, when you use the word state education department, which is an oxymoron of itself, you can always find somebody that's going to give you the answer you want. Doesn't mean it's the right answer, but they do have it in writing, so they're good to go, and it does not have to have the supermajority to pass. You only have to pass by one vote. And Michael spoke, Mr. Terlecki spoke, and Curtis spoke. So there's 4 people that spoke and asked some questions, and that was it. It was over in half an hour.
Wow.
It was over in half an hour. So
now I understand there's a meet the candidates
Monday night.
forum?
Monday night at Mount Carmel at 7 o'clock. All the candidates have been invited to.
That would be May 7th, I believe, right? Today's the 4th, 5, 6, 7, right?
Yeah. Yes. No.
Yeah.
Monday night.
Yeah.
Monday night's the 7th yard. Yes. I'm off a day. Yeah.
See,
and 7 o'clock.
That's a bad.
7 o'clock at Mount Carmel.
Yeah.
That's a bad night for that meeting.
Why is that?
Well, that's confirmation night
Oh.
Where?
everywhere.
Well, it can't be everywhere.
Well, it's down in Norwich and it's here too.
Well, that's 2 different dioceses.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well,
Everywhere.
it's a bad night for you.
That's everywhere.
There's only, we only got one bishop. He can't be everywhere.
Can't be
Even if he does 2 or 3 a night.
Oh.
It's my
Special guest daughter.
lovely daughter, Anna. Good. How are you, Anna? Just before you guys got here, my daughter Louisa was giving her senior presentation at Boston University on the engineering project, which she and her team of 4 had designed to benefit actually the engineering department at the school. They invented and built this lift mechanism. It's a very clever design all the way around. And they gave the most marvelous presentation, which was streamed over the internet. So I was upstairs while Jim was down here having coffee, watching the tail end of it. I was so proud of all of them. Louisa opened it. It was, would you say, exceptionally professional, Anna?
Very, yeah.
Very professional. It'll be. They recorded it, so it'll be up again later. So I'll probably link to it on the website. But really, just yeah, it was so nice to see a graduate of Amsterdam High School shine like
She's
that.
a graduate of Amsterdam High
I
School.
think you were the principal when she was there, weren't you?
Yeah, so she received a good education.
She received a good education from Gavin Murdoch, I'll tell you that.
Well, she took advantage of the opportunities
She
that the
did.
staff
She
presented
did.
to her.
Yes, she did.
And she's utilized those opportunities to give
you
herself
betcha.
options.
You betcha.
So it's a lot about individual choice. Would you say, Mr. Going?
And yes, it is. And I proofread this 200-something page report that they had to put out.
200 pages.
Something like that, and it's all in color, color.
Spaced.
I was gonna say.
Oh no!
25 font.
No. Well, I mean, a lot of it is.
Graphs and diagrams.
A lot of it is technical,
Yeah.
technical option stuff, but it's so clever the way they designed this thing. It's got.
What does a lift?
There's something in a very tight space in the engineering department. I don't even know what it is. There's as things stand now, they lift it out by hand because they can't get anything else in there. There's only like a 3-foot window of opportunity to even get anything in there, and there's no known device that could.
Until now.
Until now. So you got to go in there, you got to lean over, you got to pick it up, and you got to throw your back out doing it. I forget what it weighs. So they designed this thing so it would lift up to 200 pounds, and it's counterweighted. And the central design is a teeter-totter. So you move the counterweight, you move the fulcrum back essentially back and forth. You're moving the weight, so I guess you're sort of moving the fulcrum, or at least theoretically. And or in other words, you're putting a heavier guy here and a lighter guy here, whatever. But so that it balances out, so the thing just lifts up with no effort, you pull it out, the whole thing spins around. They designed the wheels so that it would, and the other weights to keep it from tipping over. And it's simple but elegant design that does exactly what you want it to do. And it shows what a good engineering department they have there. And you know what the best part of this presentation was? When they were talking about how things went wrong. And how the problems they came up with and how they solved them. And at the end, her boyfriend, Diego Yanez, who was on the team, talked about what we would like to do to improve it if we had the time. So he said, yeah, this thing, we should have a better screw mechanism here. We should do this and that. And really solid. All four of them just gave great presentations. I'm so proud.
If you give me a lever, I can move the earth.
That's it. Who said that? Archimedes, I think, isn't it?
It was his principal.
Yeah.
I wasn't his principal, but he was a principal back then.
What did he say? Give me a lever long enough, and I can
move the earth.
Move the earth.
Yeah. This is informational and educational. This program.
It really is. It really is. And the counterweights were simple, off the shelf. Lifting weights, dumbbell weights, or
kettlebell,
barbell weights. Yeah.
Don't call them dumbbells.
No, not Boston University. Anyway.
Oh no.
And our graduation's coming up in a week or two. I forget when it is, but we're going to miss another show, so I can go to her graduation.
Oh.
But
now at BU, right?
BU, Boston
Do
University.
they graduate the entire university together, or are they graduating by department?
Both. So there'll be a big graduation, and then there'll be a department graduation.
In that order?
I'm not
That's normally how they
Is
do
that
it.
okay?
Yeah, I think so.
You see, University of Kentucky did theirs differently. You did your departmental graduation, and if you wanted, you could be part of the 30,000 people in the football stadium to graduate later on.
I went to Albany State, where we had I don't know, how many were in a class? 4,000 or a couple thousand anyway. With our yearbook, there was a CD.
CD back then?
I think it was a CD. Could it have been a CD? No, it couldn't have been a CD, could it?
No, not back then.
No.
It was probably a record. It was probably a vinyl record. It was a vinyl record. It had to have been. Yeah, it was before CD, way before CDs.
Yeah,
think about
back
it.
in the 70s.
So a vinyl record came with it that had some humorous looks at college life. And the last entry was graduation, and it was kind of a parody of the way the graduation actually takes place. But it went something like this: Bachelor of Arts, please rise. You're graduated, sit down.
Yeah.
Bachelor of Science, please rise. You're graduated, sit down. That's exactly the way it was. There were too many to walk across the stage, especially in a hot summer day.
And then they had the separate departments. That's what it was in.
And we didn't have that
in Rochester.
It's funny. I had a double major in English and history, and I'd started out as a major in English, and the week before I graduated, the last class, I dropped my last English class. I didn't need it. And I ended up with a major in history and not a double major. and so I graduated from the history department without ever having had a history advisor or anything. So I don't know what department I would have gone to if we'd had departmental. Oh.
Yeah. So now that we got the city budget straightened out,
we do.
Let's talk about the school district budget.
How do you analyze that, candidate for the school board?
Well, they do issue a line by line budget,
item.
with each category there, and each of the categories are built by, teachers with their department chairs, with their building principal. The buildings and ground is built with Gary Andrews, who is in charge of buildings and grounds and transportation, and put all those things in. And this year, it looked like they did a lot of just rollover. Whatever you had left in this budget from the previous year, boom, that's you're going to get this year, without going back, as I like to say, with a zero budget.
Right.
You need to build everything in that you want. And we're going to do an examination of each of those things to determine whether or not we can afford or we really need what you put in. Because everybody would like something more.
Yeah.
Of course.
You know, a teacher wants some sort of technology. Though I have to say this year, after all the construction at the high school, all the classrooms, I believe now, are all equipped with smart boards, which are...
Whiteboards? Yeah.
White smart boards.
Yeah.
And, which is a great help because kids are just so technologically savvy today. They really do need a lot of the bells and whistles.
Those are amazing machines. Joe Isabel had one years ago, I think when they were like brand new, and he had it down at his office when we were down on Guy Park Avenue. Wow. I mean, you do everything on the whiteboard, then you press a button and you get a printed copy.
Kim Brumley used it for the presentation, and she could just run her finger up the side as you would to scroll to the different parts of the budget. It's a computerized screen, basically what it is.
Right.
And at the high school you've got some of these guys like Doug Kaufman in the social department. Man, he's got everything up. It's like a three-ring media circus he's got going on in there. And the kids, stay focused. They stay on task because all this stuff is going on. It's not simply the words like it was. An exciting lesson back then is teacher wasn't just lecturing. They had an overhead projector. Now all these things are.
Can you imagine what Sister Anna Roberta would do with this technology?
Whoa! Well, you'd have to be feeding Sippy all the time there to get
But she was way ahead of it. I mean, whatever was the current technology, she had it. I mean, if she had gotten into the age of the whiteboard, oh my God!
Oh, she'd be in heaven. She probably.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but she was revered in the classics community, and I found this out when I was taking classics courses in college. Latin and Greek and Roman history and things like that. One day I'm in Latin class and this really ancient teacher I had, she was just a lovely woman, handed out this comparison between Cicero and JFK. And I'm looking at this. I said, I've
seen that before.
I've seen this before. I said, isn't this from Sister Anna Roberta? She said, you know Sister Anna Roberta? How do you know Sister Anna Roberta? She was my Latin teacher. And I thought, and all of a sudden I went up, way up here in the teacher's estimation because I was a student of Sister Anna Roberta's.
Yeah. I remember
I was discussing this with my Greek and Roman history teacher, Dr. Polsander, and he says, you know what we call her? He was from Germany. He said, you know what we call her? He says, we call her Sister Anna Roberta Tape Recorder. Because she had that 4-track VM. Well, I remember what it is because I've got it up in my attic. I ended up buying it from her when she wanted to buy some new technology. I also have her Super 8 camera.
You do?
Remember when she was making synchronized Super 8 movies between her tape recorder and her Super 8 film?
But I remember when we did that sheet in there because they broke it out how every time Kennedy was going to emphasize something, he said it in 3 different ways.
Sure, the trichotomy. And that's exactly what they were teaching me at Albany State.
And it was, I mean, I think she believed that JFK could walk on water. I mean, she was just... Well, apparently she knew the Kennedy family from...
Well, she knew them very well, yeah.
But, I mean, she really was...
Now, she sort of denied the ancient legend that she had babysat for them. But she would say it with kind of a wink, like I'm not going to tell you that this happened. I'm not going to tell you it didn't happen. But in fact, I was going to say her maiden name. Her pre-nunhood name was Benson, and her father was very well-to-do Albany businessman, well-connected. And he and Joe Kennedy were either partners or something, or at least connected, because Joe Kennedy, the president's father, owned quite a bit of real estate in Albany. And so there was definitely a family connection, and she had that picture of her with Bobby
Yeah.
and Teddy that
Yeah.
she would have prominently displayed in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
It's possible. Age-wise, she could have been a teenager when they were a teenage babysitter when they were kids.
Yeah.
She would have been a little bit older than them, but it's possible. Whether she babysat for the president, who knows?
No.
Who knows?
Well, back to the budget anyhow. And it didn't look like they did that this time.
How the heck did we get from the budget to
Susanna
Roberta?
I don't know. No. Subliminally, she must be.
Oh, the whiteboard, the technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
All
so
right.
they have monies for that. Sometimes they get grant monies for those things, and some of the teachers are just marvelous at utilizing those things. They talked about there's a couple of propositions up. The one proposition is the bus purchases, and the district gets reimbursed 90% on our buses. So
it cost them 10 grand.
10 grand for the two buses, and
Each.
yeah, so it's 20. Yeah, because they're 90,000 piece the buses, something like that. 100,000.
Seems like a pretty small amount to replace ancient
Oh,
buses.
they're getting rid of two buses that are 10 years old.
Yeah.
And there is also some discussion.
They'll probably end up in the city fleet.
Perhaps, well, they can
could
sell
be.
them and recoup anything they get from the buses they can get. And there's also talk that they're looking, maybe using one of those or something in the near future, replace the ancient band bus.
I was going to suggest that. Yeah, I mean, it's time they replace the band bus. Sure. Yeah.
Because that's pretty rugged. So, but they were talking about that.
Now, do they have an entirely internal bus system now, or
No.
or do they
No.
rent out from Browns and
Well, from
whatever?
Browns, I think they mentioned the district's fleet itself is 10 or 11 buses, and the rest are contracted out to Browns to handle. So I mean, the number of the students in the district have huge numbers get transported now,
Yeah.
as opposed before when you had a neighborhood school. McNulty only had one bus that came in there.
What?
When it was a neighborhood school, there was only one bus that came into McNulty.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's all they had. They had a bus, and everybody else was a walker. But now because you've got the magnet schools, you get.
Boy, now there's a huge unintended consequence, I would think.
Yeah, I think they considered it, but I'm not sure they envisioned it going up like it has, because expenses have just gone up tremendously with the cost of fuel that the district has to pay. So I mean, yeah, you're right. It's an unintended consequence.
What is the distance from a school that they have to transport at this point?
It used to
A
Element-
mile?
to be a mile.
I think it's either a mile or a mile and a half for elementary, and it's a little bit further for secondary. So, I mean, if you take McNulty and you do a circumference around McNulty, it doesn't get all that far before all of a sudden you have to transport the kids. You've got kids, who live down on, Division Street that they have to transport over to Barclay.
Yeah.
That's their catchment area, or a kid down there could be elected to go to the math and engineering, which is at Curry. They'd have to bus them up there. So it's a lot more involved than it used to be. Like we went to St. Mary's, you hopped on a city bus. That's how we got there.
Well, that's how you got there. I got there on foot. You were one of the rich kids.
Up on the heights, it was. We took the Hen Glen. Us and about 150 kids on that bus. It was packed like a Russian bus. I'll tell you, it was mobbed. Bill Stanley used to be the bus driver. We had that bar up there. Do not stand ahead of this bar. We were lined up, pushed against the windshield up there.
Sitting on the step.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And if you're good, Bill will let you go.
Oh yeah, the after-school buses were just cramped. I mean, you look at the buses today and you say, what? They
were crammed.
I mean, I remember just a couple of times taking the bus up Market Hill, and I don't know why. I don't know why I did. Tell you the truth, because we always walked everywhere. But wow, I mean, it was sardines.
It was, and once you got up off of Market Hill, it thinned out a lot. Us over in the
And then
heights.
you had the bus passes.
used to punch 'em.
the commuter passes.
Yeah.
So it was probably, what, 10 cents a ride maybe it worked
Yeah,
out
I
to?
think it was
or-
$1.20 for a pass of 10 of them. Bill
Yeah.
Stanley would click there and
Right.
clip it until you ran out, and you have all those
Right.
little punch hole things all over the floor in there at the end of the day.
And in those days, you could actually go to Tribesville or Gloversville on them, right? The Valmer line ran all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, you had the Roman Avenue bus, you had the Henrietta Glen bus,
Right.
you had the Division
Park
Street
Hill
bus,
Vroman.
Park Hill Vroman. Yeah.
Lion Street Hageman.
You know, I can remember a couple of times the Hen Glen couldn't get up Glen Avenue in the wintertime, and you had to back down and go the route reverse, go up, try to get up Henrietta.
And at one time, the buses had plows on the front because that's how they actually plowed their way through. That was before our time.
Okay.
That's way back.
Well, the city didn't do any plowing until probably after the war. Yeah.
I can remember
Yeah,
that time.
and in order to keep it, all right, I think Uncle Si telling us that his father they lived on Vanderveer Street, and his father used to put the car up for the winter because there was no point.
You couldn't drive.
You couldn't drive anywhere. You couldn't go down Locust Avenue. You couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they just put the car up on blocks for the winter, and there was no plowing.
Yeah.
But they had when they did the Park Hill Roman line, they had to. I think it was the bus itself that plowed its way through. Yeah, those were the days.
I wonder if they've ever done an analysis and whether they're better off with the magnet schools than they are with the other schools that closed
I mean, close the bacon?
Yeah.
In what way better?
financially.
Financially, well, you took, a lot of expenses going to operating a building. You've got all, you got your personnel, those costs. At some point in time, you're going to end up spending now probably more than you would if and in particular year than you would if you kept it open. But I think that the concept of the magnet school was what was good. I don't think the kids were hurt academically by going to another school. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody feels, a great affinity for where they've gone to school or where the
Yeah,
kids go,
yeah.
and
Neighborhood schools.
kids, 2 weeks in it was no big deal for the
Oh
kids.
no, the kids,
but
the kids, they
can
make the
adapt.
fan.
Yeah.
Right, they play on the same ball
No,
teams. And yeah.
Schenectady's got the big issue going on this year because they're closing a number of their elementary schools and they're doing something with the middle schools down there. So they've got the same kind of growing pains down there this year that we had up here, and it's a hard decision. I mean, it touches people's hearts instead of their pocketbooks.
Yeah.
But once you make the transition, the kids are fine. I think the concept of focusing on these different areas are good for the kids. I think the district this year, over the last few years, has worked real hard to get teachers out for training and technology and pedagogy. People say, well, they don't have to go to these conferences. They don't send them away for a week at a time like other professions do, but they have conferences throughout New York State different times. And
Oh,
teachers
Judge Camp used to be great. Let me tell you.
It's a good thing.
Like going to Columbia.
What? No, it wasn't like going to Columbia. No.
People always say, well, what do teachers have to go back to school for? And I always tell them, well, let's see. I go to a dentist. I'd hate to think my dentist is using something 20 years today they used 20 years ago without keeping up on it. And they do.
Right.
I mean, dentists have to go back on a regular basis to get,
Right.
and it's the same thing for
The
teaching.
doctors have to do the same.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want tools they used 20 years ago on you today. I mean, today some of them are robotic. They're doing almost by playing a video game. Yeah. So it's good to get the teachers out. It's good to get the teachers out to have a chance to meet their colleagues.
Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Oh.
It's not just, but,
Oh, Jim, you're so with it. Wow.
So I think that way. But the fact of the matter, even though the budget didn't go up, the budget didn't go down either.
Yeah.
And the people who paid extra $2,000 last year are pretty much be paying an extra $2,000 this year, which means over 4 years, over 2 years, they paid an extra $4,000. That's a lot of money.
It sure is.
Let me tell you.
And that was one of the points that Mr. Chiara brought up is that we all of a sudden 3-4 weeks ago we got this extra money coming in. Instead of just throwing it in, that you should have cut back. You know, cut back the amount that the taxpayers have to pay, because we're still paying. It's not like the budget didn't go up, so we don't
You know,
pay
even
anything.
if you take just half of it, you're making a significant
I heard
bump in it.
I heard a couple minutes on yesterday's show with Mr. Gray.
Yeah,
Skip said-
Skip Gray, Leon Gray, they call him Skip.
Yeah, that he's looking to make it a sales tax thing to pay school taxes.
He's looking at other streams of revenue.
Except for homeowners.
Except for homeowners, and that's it, because you're already paying. How can you spread that out? You know, so it doesn't spread it out among the homeowners. You're already paying your part. What can we do so there's other people contributing to the pie? You know, we don't have a housing boom within the city of Amsterdam, so we're not getting all this new property to get money from. So how can you spread out what we pay?
You know, when Reagan was governor of California, he had enough gumption to bite the bullet, and they took over the state took over the expenses of the local school districts, and so it made it uniform.
Oh, really?
Statewide, instead of all this. You know, having the poorest districts with the highest taxes, which makes them the poorest district the next year or two, and keeps them poor. Because after all, the state's interest is in educating all the children of the state, not just educating the children from the rich school districts or you know. And you know, the day when property taxes make any sense whatsoever as for a funding source for schools is long gone. I mean, it's not like property owners are the lords of the manor anymore. The property owners are ma and pa just scraping by in a two-family house. Well, anyway, that's my complaint. Here's my second complaint. It's sort of school-related. We went up to see Footloose last weekend. I said we were going to go on Saturday. We ended up going on Friday, and my congratulations to all, and particularly to Stephanie Boyce, who did her last show as music director.
She's retiring.
Really? She's retiring?
She's retiring at the end of the year, but I noticed that they had done a paint job at the school. Among other things that they painted over was my son Jamie's standing on his head shadow down one of the hallways. That's gone.
Down the art wing.
I noticed Justin Nutson's is still there by the staircase from the side entrance, but Jamie's is gone. And more importantly, my son's godfather, Gary Johnson, has disappeared. The Gary Johnson mural was gone.
I didn't know they painted over that.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a nice memorial to Gary after he was killed.
Right by the band showcases. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The big thing today was Susan and Manfred were on the radio today about the castle.
Oh, I saw that they're getting some big award
they got a big award for restoration and whatever, and they had a.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they invest a lot of time and money in there.
A lot
and
of money.
It's
We should have Manfred back on the show. He can tell us what he would do as controller.
Ooh.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good idea. Good idea.
So reach out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they straighten this thing out with the budget. That's.
Well, as you mentioned, there is going to be meet the candidates tonight, Monday, and we encourage anybody and everybody to come and attend and see what the candidates have to say, and to be able to make an informed decision who you'd like to have on the board.
You know, I got a phone call this morning from somebody who called up to let me know the meeting was taking place. Obviously, making a lot of phone calls.
Is that the one you hung up on?
No. That was some opinion bureau.
Oh.
God. You make one campaign contribution and they get you for life.
Yeah, I'll be out of town, so I wish I was there. I was able to go.
And you're going out of town because?
My grandson is being confirmed, and I'm going to be his sponsor.
There you go.
How old is your grandson?
15.
15. Now the bishop gets to slap him, or you get to slap him?
I think I'm going to slap him.
Okay. Okay. And that's down in Norwich.
Down in Norwich,
Norwich.
yeah. They don't slap them now, they just
They don't.
put their hand.
What's that,
put their
Syracuse
hand on their
Diocese,
shoulder.
or is it in Albany? No,
Binghamton.
it can't be in Albany.
It's not Albany.
It can't be in
Binghamton.
Albany.
Well,
Well,
either Binghamton or Syracuse, one of them.
I think
Oh,
Syracuse.
boy. That's not
But they don't slap them anymore. They
No.
put the hand on their shoulder.
If I
and
get
say,
charged with abuse.
"Oh, what a
just
nice
slap
boy
them
you
now.
are."
Oh,
So,
What'd you say your name is?
that's not a saint's name.
That's not a saint's name. Who are you kidding? Yeah. Who are you kidding?
We had a chance to be down at St. Mary's Church this morning before we came here. Our son played at a funeral down there, so we saw the Riley boys and Mrs. Riley down there. And he played in the front of the church for the first two, and on the way out he played up in the loft. You know, he's up in the nether region. He's go up in the-
So he marched in with the coffin?
No, he stood up in front and played as they brought the coffin in.
Wow.
And then when they took the coffin out, he played.
Well, that's pretty nice.
He played Danny Boy when they came in, and he played Amazing Grace for them when they came out. So, but it's being in St. Mary's brought back a few memories, you know.
Yeah.
You know. And,
I remember my confirmation there. I was late for it. I misunderstood the time, and my grandfather, who was my sponsor, was deaf, so he got it. So yeah. Remember, we arrived. I thought I was a half hour early, and we arrived as they're already marching from the school down to the subway. So I just grabbed my robe, threw it on.
my sister wasn't happy.
Did I? No, I don't even think I got to process in with them. I think I ran up the side aisle and slid into place.
Jumped the line.
Yeah,
Huh?
that was Bishop Scully, Bishop William A. Scully.
That's right. He was bishop back then.
Yeah. I had to do a little more research for my book because a couple of episodes of the show ago I mentioned how I got the email saying I missed the guy who had been declared dead in July of 1946. So I went back and read July, August, and September 46 papers this week up at the County Archives in Fonda. And thank you, Kelly, for your hospitality. I found something very interesting that I think would be of interest to you.
What was that, sir?
In September of 1946, the Bigelow Sanford Uniteds did in fact field a soccer team, and back in the National League, there had been no games for like 4 years at that point. They'd suspended the league during the war, and the last champions were the Bigelow Sanford Uniteds. So they were playing in a professional league, an amateur team playing in a professional league. And Johnny Campbell, of course, had been injured in the war and couldn't play anymore. So he was the manager. He was the coach of the team. And but it was great. Howie Dines was back. Slagus, the Tolson brothers, Pearson, Harry Tolson, a McKnight or two, and one of the McKnights was co-coaching, and Howie Dines gets injured, and one of the McKnights comes in to take his place. But you got to remember, these guys are now 4 years older than they were. They've been through the war, and they were not the fleet of foot, and yet they were playing one of these New York City teams, and they clobbered them 3-0. And they said the defense was fabulous.
3-0's a big score.
So I don't know how the season turned out, and I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to find out. But that does answer our question whether they ever played again.
Yeah,
In fact, they did. In fact, they did, and it was pretty much the same team that they had left behind when the war started. And that must have been a phenomenal day for them to get back on the field together.
Sure.
Wow.
And that was a centerpiece up there where Veterans Field.
Yeah.
Had the big wooden monster around it, the big green fence around there.
Yeah.
And it was a happening place in the city.
Out in the periphery, Dutch Hill.
Yeah.
Whoever calls it Dutch Hill anymore, other than us.
Anybody knows it's.
It was ever
People
called
even
Dutch
know
Hill.
it's Dutch Hill.
Right.
I never heard that name, Dutch Hill.
Yeah. In fact, if you didn't, if Cork Hill didn't have a liquor store, you probably wouldn't remember that was Cork Hill.
Yeah.
Wow. You had Cork Hill, Park Hill, Market Hill, Dutch Hill.
Hey, that was that was great what you put in last week when you were talking.
The history of Market Hill.
I mean,
was that amazing?
There was nothing there.
And nothing, and that was within this woman's memory.
There was nothing there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it was such a distance from where there was nothing here to get up to Sanford's, you know, the stud farm there. It was a long way. It's not right up the
For
hill.
those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I had found an early history of Market Hill that was written by a Mrs. Goler in 1942. And she was going back to her childhood in the early 1890s, I guess what you would call, what would you call it? Not that there's anything wrong with it, 90s. And plus she had a collective memory going back to the beginning of time practically. She gave a whole history of Thomas Bunn. Most of what is now developed at Market Hill, what we think of as Market Hill, was the Thomas Bunn farm. Now, it wasn't his farm. He just bought it for investment, I think, and owned the farmhouse, but didn't actually live in it. And, but it was one great story after another. Yeah. And at the time, Market Street ended at Prospect Street, because that's where the cemetery was. It was the gate to the cemetery, was the top of the hill. And if you can imagine how steep that was, you climbed to the top of Market Street to get into the cemetery. And of course, it was all done by horse-drawn wagon.
They really did have to climb.
It really did have to climb. And the cemetery was on the Tom and Max side of what is now Market Street. Mm-hmm. And there were old, like, Indian trails going through there and convenience paths. But they pointed out that when Bunn had his farmhouse on what is now Arnold and Market, the nearest streets were Northampton Road, which was then known as the Plank Road, mm-hmm. which is a substantial distance from essentially McDonald's, right? And the nearest street on the other side was Locust Avenue.
Wow.
And there were paths where people from the Northampton Road area or what existed of the West End would walk over the hill to get to the broom shop on, with the non-existent Brookside Avenue. I guess that was just a path too. And over to the Sanfords, they'd be up and down through the hills and stuff like that. But that was it. And then if you were coming, what did they say? That the merchants weren't getting any business from the north because there was no way to get there.
Couldn't get there from here.
You can't get there from here. The Plank Road was a toll road that ran to Northville from Guy Park Avenue, what is now Guy Park Avenue, from what was then the Harrower House down on the corner here on Northampton and Guy Park. Guy Park didn't exist. Yeah. It was the end of Spring Street.
Right.
So it ran from Spring Street to Northville. And what did it say? The toll was like 5 cents per toll gate or something. Yeah. But I guess the first toll gate was at what's now the city line, just below the Sanford Farms entrance on what is now Upper Market Street or Perth Road. So they decided to connect the two parts of connect the top of Northampton Road with the top of Market Street. What is that, a mile? More than a mile, probably. And so they just cut with oxen or whatever. They just cut that whole Market Street Hill road, and then in the process opened up
the whole area.
The whole Bunn farm into building lots starting in 1870.
And it was interesting as you read through it. All these names that were mentioned, these families. They're all streets.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How can they call it to them?
I'm pretty sure Bunn's full name was Thomas Henry Bunn, and his wife was Elizabeth. So he got Thomas Street, Henry Street, Elizabeth Street, and Bunn Street.
All right there.
All right there, just his family. Story was somebody who bought one of the houses and was pretty well to do. Trinity was Mary Street, and I think Mary was one of the Bunn daughters, if I'm not mistaken. So, boy, after that.
Yeah, it was a great thing.
Yeah.
It was very good.
And then
detective work.
I've had that I've had that article for several years. I finally got around to transcribing it. It belonged to a scrapbook that Diane Hale Smith gave me that I've been using for the World War II stuff, but this was actually written during that time period, so just fantastic. The bear story was unbelievable. The dancing bear. God, so that was... So read that on my blog, rgoing.livejournal.com, or you can pick it up on the I Grew Up in Amsterdam, New York Facebook site as well. There's a link to it.
Which is always
Always
expanding, even though there's a few people who decided they're tired of the political.
Well, yeah, I really think that has
there.
no place on that site, but you can't convince the people who are doing it. So I throw in a 2 cents every once in a while myself. But, I don't post them. I try to keep the posting to the topic at hand. And there sure is plenty of interesting history.
Oh yeah, I mean some of the pictures people have put up there of old Amsterdam, it's fabulous.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated by what I find. I've got somewhere in my research there was a picture of the Arnold Avenue School. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I keep saying that because when we're on the radio, it's easy to repeat yourself. But when you do it like this, people can go back and say, "You said that again." But there was a picture of the Arnold Avenue School back when there was nothing around it, nothing at all.
Just the school.
Just the school and just miles of empty fields. And what did it say? The Bun Farm had. Was it wheat fields or something like that? Wheat fields and orchards.
Yeah.
The whole thing. The part that really got me is how the little girl, Mrs. Goler, when she was a little girl, would on Sundays the family would take a walk around Market Hill to see how many new houses had started in the previous week.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was they wanted to get people out of downtown to a healthier environment up on the hill. So even back then, they knew that these lower reaches had unhealthy air.
And that's true in every community.
Yeah.
The founders and the first people who came in and had some money, they built their mansions towards the center of the city.
Mm-hmm.
As things develop, those people tend to move further and further out, and the center of the city becomes more impoverished than the outskirts, because I don't want to live out there. Where people want to live out, they want to live out there.
Oh yeah, the original Sanford homestead became the homestead building where Larrabee's was, and the Pulling house across the street, back when Market Street was Pulling Street. The original mansions were near the Chuctanunda.
Yeah.
And the Academy, which was the old Globe Hotel or something, and then moved up to Academy Street, which had to have been the top of the world. That predated Academy Street. The site of the Academy Street School was the site of the Amsterdam Academy, which was a private school until the city took it over.
What is in the Academy Street School now?
What's that?
What is
the Academy Street School? It's apartments.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's for sale too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did turn it into apartments after a while, but the view from there. I mean, when that was the Academy, that was the top of the world. Right? There was nothing behind it.
No.
Nothing behind it at all, except dancing bears.
Dancing bears.
And somebody, I think it was Diane Hatzenbuehler, pointed out that because part of that article talked about who the principals at the Amsterdam Academy were and who were on the board of directors. And the board of directors reads like the street names of the city. And I said my favorite was Leonard Yeoman Gardner, who had 3 streets, named 3 streets after himself, and what became, what's the name of the factory down there on Yeoman and Leonard?
That's the.
They moved up. The Chinese owned it now, and they moved up to the industrial. At any rate, it started out as the Gardner something knitting mill, when it first started. So that was his factory. So he probably had one of those houses down on Gardner Street. But yeah, I mean, nothing was there, and that stuff was all built up over. Yeah, I mean, we went from 5,000 to 40,000, or nearly 40,000 in a really short period of time.
Yeah, we did.
So it must have been amazing when they were laying these streets out and development after development. I mean, most of the stuff like up here in Upper Church Street were all done after the war.
Yeah. The stuff up here was done after the 60s. A lot of
Some of it,
up here,
yeah.
because when I was a
That's
kid
what
up
they
on
used to have
Fairmount, we'd come up there and it was just fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to have
You know?
we used to have the festivals up there.
There was just, there was a house here or there, but there was no development. I mean, those were all brand new houses on this end of.
One of the big controversies in 1946 is the people up here on University, in the Greater University Place area, were really up in arms over the fact that the circus and the carnivals would play on the St. Mary's lot, which became, the Joe Isabel development up there. And so they passed an ordinance prohibiting circuses within the city or something like that. That's no circuses allowed in the city.
Yeah.
Barnum and Bailey used to come
last
here.
one
Yeah, they did. I remember when they had the one by Skyview.
Right.
Well, you didn't have Barnum and Bailey, but you had the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus used to come regularly, and
They have a parade downtown, and
I remember one time they played up by the Graziani barn on near Manny's Corners one year when we were kids. Then they would play up by Skyview
I
and
remember
up
that
in that
one.
area. And there was
Yeah.
one fairly recently, since I've had kids, that was played up that area someplace. That was fun. The circus would come, the elephants would come up Market Street.
Yeah.
How about Lillian Russell coming up Market Street? That was one of the stories in there. Wow.
people show up to watch her come up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the horns would blow. Lillian Russell is coming, riding up to the Sanford,
Sanford Hill.
Sanford Estates. Sanford, Florida has been in the news a lot lately. City of Sanford, Florida, because that's where the Zimmerman Martin shooting took place. And it happens that my research took me to Sanford, Florida, since last we met. Sanford, Florida was founded by essentially our Sanfords.
Really?
There were two branches of the Sanford family. In the Market Hill story, you see the story about John Sanford, the itinerant tin peddler, who by pluck and luck ends up as a teacher in the greater Amsterdam, New York area when he was 18 years old, because he knew how to read and write, and they needed a teacher, and he happened to be staying overnight in a farm up in the Log City area. And so that's how he became a teacher, and that's how he ended up staying here and founding the carpet industry. His older brother, Nehemiah Sanford, stayed in Connecticut and made a fortune in brass tacks. Okay? And he had a son and heir, Henry Shelton Sanford, who became a diplomat, a big diplomat, and before and during and after the Civil War, he was minister to Belgium until 1869. He'd been appointed by Lincoln to be minister to Belgium, and then U.S. Grant wanted to make him minister to Spain, and I guess his wife didn't want to go to Spain. Anyway, somewhere along the line, Henry marries a well-to-do Philadelphia aristocracy heiress. Okay, and they had a bunch of kids, but Henry was the only heir of the tack fortune, the brass tack fortune. So Henry the diplomat is a first cousin of Stephen Sanford, who was the real genius in the Amsterdam Sanfords, because he's the one who took his father's burned out business and turned it into one of the great industries of the world, and one of the most fabulous. He developed one of the most fabulous personal fortunes in the country. Okay. And all of a sudden, Stephen Sanford becomes, ranking social guy. Well, Stephen's son John, the second John, in the 1890s, is looking for a wife. He's 40-something years old, hasn't married yet. And he's something of a playboy, this guy, because he's living off his father's fortune. He goes to Congress and stuff like that, but he's not really involved in the business, and never really is. By this time, the business is running itself. Mm-hmm. And so John Sanford, the 40-something-year-old, is interested in the horses, and he's the guy who's, is more interested in his father's horse stables than he is in his
carpet
in the carpet industry. So he needs a wife, and oh, by the way, let's go going back to Henry Shelton Sanford and the other branch of the family. After the war, he comes back and forth to the States, but he remains pretty much in Belgium and becomes a confidant of King Leopold, and it becomes his lobbyist to get the United States to recognize Leopold's personal claim to Belgium, with the Congo, and he invests money in the Congo and things like that. But he also invests money in Florida real estate, and lost most of it. Apparently, he was not a very sharp businessman, however good a diplomat he may have been. Mm-hmm. And among other things, he founds what is now the city of Sanford, Florida. It was a completely manufactured community. They figured it was one of those many boom and bust Florida real estate deals. After the war, they figured everybody was going to move to Florida. It was before air conditioning. So Sanford, Florida was founded by them, and they had a big estate down there, among other places around the world. So his daughter Ethel ends up marrying Stephen Sanford's son John. So the two Sanford fortunes plus the incredible Philadelphia fortune all end up in one family. Okay? Stephen Sanford dies 1913. John, his son, inherits the fortune. He has the three spoiled kids. Sarah, Laddie, and Gertrude. Okay? By the way, that marriage took place in Sanford, Florida. So now they've got the townhouse in New York City on 72nd Street, Upper East Side. They've got the estate in Palm Beach. They've got an estate in South Carolina. They've got God knows what else. And of course, as soon as the old man dies, they rebuild 61 Church Street, what is now City Hall. And it becomes the fabulous mansion that they spent $2 million refurbishing that building. Essentially, they basically tore down the old building and rebuilt and made this huge brick thing. The whole back half of City Hall was non-existent. Probably from the Common Council chambers, including the Common Council chambers back, was all built in 1913-17 era. And they build, among other things, that nursery, right, on the third floor, with the ornamental plaster, with the airplanes and the horses and the different animals built into the ceiling. By the time they get around to doing this, the Sanford kids are grown up. They're born like Laddie was probably 17, 18 years old, even more, 18, 19 years old. He was already away at school. I think he'd already started Yale before they finished the building. The girls were a little bit younger, but not significantly. So that, I think Gertrude was the youngest, born 19, I don't know. She might have been 11 or 12. Okay. So they build this nursery, and it's essentially never used.
Never used.
They all grow up. All this is preliminary to my writing a story about Gertrude. because during World War II, she became a spy. And she was captured by the Nazis and had all these great adventures escaping from the Nazis, and they're shooting at her while she's running across the Swiss border and all this stuff. So, I mean, that's a great story in and of itself. But they become less and less Amsterdamians, if they ever were, and more just playboys of the Western world. Mm-hmm. I mean, Laddie Sanford was like the most eligible bachelor in the country. I mean, they were all in the society pay. They're playing golf with the Duke of Windsor. You know, I mean, this is, you know, they take this estate out on the Hamptons, and it's all wealth beyond our faintest imaginings.
Mm-hmm. And their wealth, as great as it was, compared, just way beyond the pale.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think of them as, as being, I mean, even though the mother founded the Century Club down here, you don't think of them as hanging out in Amsterdam. They were New Yorkers. Spoiled brats. Along the late 20s, Gertrude is actually the first one to get married, and she's fairly up there. You know, she's late 20s. By the time she gets married in 1929, she has already shot elk in the Grand Tetons. I think been to Alaska on expeditions, and she does this American National History Museum expedition to Africa to come back with hunting specimens, and it's called the Sanford Legendre expedition, and the other guy in charge of it she ends up marrying. I don't know whether they were having a romance before the trip, but they certainly did afterwards, and he's from this fabulously wealthy New Orleans family. You know, around the same time there was a play produced on Broadway called Holiday, which you may have very well have seen because it was made twice into a movie. The second one is the more famous version, starring Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn plays Gertrude Sanford in this movie, and I guess if I recall the plot, Cary Grant is kind of a working guy who worked his way up, kind of modeled after, in fact, I think the author of the play, Philip Barry, who also wrote the Philadelphia story. And I think he's engaged to the older Sanford girl called Seton in the thing, and and she doesn't understand him as much as the Gertrude character does, and then he ends up with the Gertrude character. There's a scene in the movie where there's a big society ball downstairs, I think in honor of the marrying couple. And the Gertrude character, played by Hepburn, is having her own party upstairs because she can't stand the society fol-de-rol. She's an adventuress. She's not... And so she has her own party upstairs in the nursery. Taking place on East 72nd Street, but it is so much like the City Hall nursery, and it's very poignant looking at this because she mentions that it's the only place she's ever been happy. In that room by herself, playing, right? And I think the nursery at City Hall is probably saying, I mean, what could it have been like growing up in that kind of, that fabulous wealth where nobody's paying any, where you can't mix with anybody. Yeah. And that's why she became her own, in her own way, despite her wealth, she did what she wanted to do. And
they were not a part of the community fabric.
Right.
They were just so different.
So I'm up in Fonda the other day, and I'm looking for a copy of this. Among them, doing the newspapers, but I asked them if they had a copy of the Sanfords of Amsterdam because I wanted to see what that book said about Gertrude's adventures in the war, and they did. They also found for me, in a box up in the attic, a scrapbook that somebody had kept and somebody else had donated of the Sanfords. When they were in all the society pages and the rotogravure and stuff like that, Laddie Sanford is the richest and most handsomest bachelor in the whole country and most eligible bachelor, and he ends up marrying the movie star Mary Duncan and all that. Now he wasn't that handsome. He was a good polo player, but he doesn't.
Money makes you look better.
Money definitely makes you look better. And then there's an article about this big party thrown in the East 72nd Street house in honor of the upcoming bride and groom. I think, I gotta check the dates, but I think that party took place after the play was written, after Holiday was written. But among the guests, and it lists all the guests, there are a few people from here whose names you would recognize. But it was like they were like an afterthought, we got to invite the people from they were running the factory, and I think Holly Hughes was probably there, Mr. and Mrs. Philip Barry. Barry obviously knew these people well, and apparently they weren't offended by the play, notwithstanding that the Laddie Sanford character comes off as a worthless drunken fop. But isn't that fascinating? But I'm wondering if the play was written afterwards, whether this is the party.
What came first?
Yeah. Whether this is the party that, only in this case, Gertrude is the Katharine Hepburn character is the bride, not the sister. But
the reporter, the newspaper at the time must have had a full-time reporter just following these folks around. As much as the paper was not devoted to them, but boy, they put. Every time they came around, there was stuff there.
And it was all there was never anything negative.
Oh no.
And here's one of the other sister, Sarah, the older sister, eventually marries, and now she's well along when she gets married. She's like 40 or close to it when she finally marries, and she marries an Italian diplomat in 1937. Panzo, I think his name was. I forget. Well, he's one of Mussolini's boys. Yeah. Mussolini, though, gave him a hard time about marrying the Sanford girl, and held up the permission for like a year or two before he was allowed to go to New York and marry this girl. That's how tight they're. He ends up as Mussolini's ambassador to Belgium, exactly like his wife's maternal grandfather.
Small world.
Yeah, isn't that something? Except he's representing fascist Italy.
Yeah.
Then the story gets really vague, and there's nothing that you will find in the recorder because of what we were just talking about, because the Sanfords were revered, that tells the rest of the story. Because they end up being in Rome, and there is one article from like late 1944 or mid 1944 where the Sanfords finally hear from Sarah for the first time in a year. Now let's see, what's taken place in the last year? Mussolini is overthrown, and the Americans fight their way to Rome. And suddenly, when Rome is liberated, Sarah Sanford reappears. It becomes a very questionable thing. What the heck was happening in between? the story when Panzo, if that's his name, suddenly dies drowning a year or two after the war is that, well, we don't know if he was a fascist or not to begin with, right? But he changed sides during the war.
Spin City, even back then.
Right. Yeah. He changed sides during the war, and he and his wife lived underground for a year. Well, of course they lived underground. The fascist party had been overthrown, and then the Nazis occupied that part of Italy. The Italy had formally surrendered, but there was no. Mussolini tried to form a government in the north, but basically they were under Nazi occupation. Who the heck knows what they were doing during the war? But it's kind of fascinating that this wealthy American heiress spends the whole war essentially behind enemy lines as the wife of a enemy diplomat.
This is all from Amsterdam.
There's a lot of story there that's untold, and in the Sanfords of Amsterdam, there is no mention of Sarah during World War II whatsoever. it's like all of a sudden the war's over, her husband's dead.
There you go.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And now the question arises in my mind, how the heck, other than fabulous wealth, does Gertrude get to be a top secret member of the OSS?
Because she's got a connection on the other side of the line, Bob. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, you would think if someone were doing a background check today, how could you let this person? I'm not, and I'm sure she was absolutely 100% pro-American. There seems to be no question about that. But she's got a sister, and not just some second cousin. She's got a sister who is married to one of Mussolini's boys.
Yeah. Well, certainly the thought is, you know what? She has that connection. Maybe there's stuff that she can find out.
Maybe there's stuff she can find out, except they were putting her in charge of what her job was, to go over through all the cables that were coming to the London office. And then they send it. It's absolutely unclear, unless she wrote it in her 1987 autobiography, which was her second autobiography. I haven't read that. Unless she wrote it in there, it's not at all clear what the heck she was doing in France. But they had her in a WAC uniform as a lieutenant, even though she had never joined the WACs. And she had when she's captured, she's got OSS ID on her, as does the other people with her, and they burned that while they were waiting for the Germans to come down and accept their surrender flag. So what was she doing there? And how the heck did she get out? Because they had, it was a very intricate maneuver to get her out of the country, and she had Nazi help getting out. I mean, and there were they had another guy at the border who was a double agent all through the war, who comes up behind her. She didn't even know who he was, and just whispers to her, "Run." And she ran for the Swiss border and got over, and that was that. But it was it was quite a few months. But she was treated very well while she was there. But I guess she had the money to do that. But it's the untold story is the story I'd like to know.
And we would like to know the rest of the story.
The rest of the story.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's going to be a whole different book, I think. But anyway, Gertrude's gotten a chapter in the book. I don't know if I'm going to mention Sarah's fascist connections or not, because I don't know how relevant that is to my story. But wow. So Sanford, all that springs from Sanford, Florida. Has been in the newspaper lately.
Yeah.
Wow. That's something.
All from Amsterdam.
All from Amsterdam.
No.
Can you?
You can't imagine.
You cannot imagine. When he was when he was the Prince of Wales, the future Edward VIII was hanging out with the Sanfords at the polo grounds and stuff like that. And when Gertrude goes to London, she's throwing parties for the American ambassador to Britain and things like that, who also has a local connection, as you know. As the American ambassador to England, John Wynant, had a son who was in the same plane as Walt Wiedemann from Dutch Hill. And the plane went down and they were both captured and were prisoners of war together. Yeah.
Interesting.
Little city upon the river.
Not a mean. I come from not a mean city, as from no mean city, as St. Paul said. Or I'm a citizen of no mean city, meaning Rome. He meant. And that's something. Wow.
You don't have to go far to find interesting history, and people don't recognize how close it all is to home.
In the scrapbook also was John Sanford's funeral in the late 30s. And it was, they had to close Church Street off. They had the funeral at Second Press, and there were pictures. And then there was a whole mob outside the church. I mean, thousands of people. And thousands of people at the cemetery up on Green Hill. And by this time, they'd been out of Amsterdam 10 years, close to it, well, really completely out. Everybody showed up for the end of an era. But it looked like a carnival. In other words, these people weren't standing in a funereal atmosphere. It was a carnival atmosphere. Wow, wow, here comes Laddie. Ooh, here comes the Playboy of the Western world. Oh, there's Mary Duncan, the movie star.
Local spectacle.
Yeah, like
it was
the Oscars.
It was a spectacle.
Yeah.
It was a spectacle. But, wow. And apparently the mother who founded the Century Club never much cared for living in Amsterdam. She was a society girl. I mean, she grew up in Brussels under, mixing with royalty.
Yeah,
and she came from Philadelphia royalty.
And we didn't have much royalty. We had a lot of history.
Yeah. And her, the Sanford, her branch of the Sanfords were always fabulously wealthy, whereas this branch, after all,
With new money, not old money.
That's right. They were the nouveau riche.
Yeah.
And her branch of the Sanfords included descent from Thomas Wells, who had been the early governor of Connecticut, who is the ancestor of more. Well, you got to imagine anybody whose family came over the second or third ship after the Mayflower is going to have a lot of descendants anyway. But his descendants include, among the Gertrude Sanford types, also include Gerald Ford, Nancy Davis Reagan, Archibald MacLeish, the poet laureate of the United States at one time. Bruce Dern and Laura Dern, the actors. One of the first founders of the OSS was a distant cousin who probably is the one who hired Gertrude Sanford. A couple of United States senators. One of the original 12 apostles of the Mormon Church, who later became the third mayor of Salt Lake City. One of the founder of Wells Fargo and Company. You just go on and on and on. The list, branching out, is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh.
And I'm sure they're probably related to the three of us somewhere or other. Somewhere or other.
I spent a couple weeks in Sanford back in the middle 50s.
Where exactly is Sanford in the?
It's just north of Orlando.
Isn't there a base there?
Isn't
there a
I don't know. A friend of mine.
military base down there?
A friend of mine moved down there to go to work with Martin Marietta, and we went down for a couple weeks.
What's it like?
Back then, it was a lot of orange groves. They were starting to build those block homes along the, into the orange groves. They were
So it's like in Central
Florida.
Central Florida.
Yeah.
So you can only begin to imagine that in the 1870s it probably didn't amount to a hill of beans.
Yeah, it didn't. It was all orange groves or overgrown swampland. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Sanford Wright Air Base is down there. That's what it is.
I think I've been writing this up, and I think I put a footnote in that despite his bad investments, there's no indication that the party ended up in the poorhouse at any time. Wow. Anyway, what else we got to talk about this? Well, I'm on the County Charter Commission, and we made some moves forward this week. There's a general consensus reached that we want to put the idea of a county legislature up on the ballot. The exact form it's going to take, we're going to work on at the next meeting. In other words, how many members to replace the current Board of Supervisors and the two-hat system that we currently have. And set up legislative districts instead.
Did they draw up the legislative districts?
Well,
somebody said they wanted 3 different.
Well, yeah, we have one proposal that had already been done before we started that called for 8 county legislators. There would be like 3 from the city, and then there would be a legislative district that included the town of Amsterdam, the town of Florida, and town of Glen plus Fonda, I think, and that would have 2 representatives in it. Then there would be a northern district that included the rest of the town of Mohawk, town of Palatine, and Palatine and Nelliston, Palatine Bridge and Nelliston, and that would have 1 representative, and then there'd be a 2-member that picked up St. Johnsville, Charleston. I'm not sure where Root goes. Canajoharie and Root, and Minden. Nah, I'm not sure where Root goes. Root I think is in the other district, but I'm not sure. But in any event, it ends up with 8, and it works out. What's nice about it is you keep full town lines, except for moving Fonda across the river, so that you can do that and still fall within the acceptable range of equal districts, or equal number of representatives representing an equal number of citizens, which is what I like about it. So they're going to try to. Some people want an odd number, so I said, well, let's try 7 and 11 as well. So they're going to try to draw that up for the next meeting, and we'll look at that. But this would be a major achievement, even if it gets on the ballot, because this has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors, which means that some members of the Board of Supervisors would have to vote to essentially abolish their 2-hat positions. And make up their minds which one they want to be, the town supervisor or the county representative.
Who are the members on this commission?
Ooh, well, let's see.
How many members?
How many members?
Yeah. All right, we'll name them. We'll count them.
Well, let's name them. There's a woman whose name I forget, a woman who never shows up. Then you got Peter Capabianco, myself, Vinnie Stark. There's a fellow who's an engineer. I forget which town he's from. He's very interesting. There are people with different perspectives, which is nice. You got Jim Post, who I think is the mayor of Palatine Bridge. Dusty, what's his name, is the president of the college.
Schwanger.
Yeah. Bill Wills. Am I missing somebody or not?
Thayer?
Oh, Fred Hitty. Fred Hitty.
And how long a process is this going to?
Oh, very short. We're going to be done in June, and
be on the ballot in the fall.
we're going to be done in June, so they can put it on the ballot. And I guess they have to do it by July something to get it on the ballot, or at least start holding the public hearings or something. And it's going to be relatively simple. Our mandate is to have a charter including a county executive. The legislative district proposal may go on as a separate proposal so that one doesn't drag the other one down. How we're going to do that technically, I'm not sure. That's up to the Board of Supervisors and the county attorney to figure out. I'm just a peon. But anyway, that's moving along, and one of the town supervisors who's in favor of legislative districts says, I asked him, whether you think this has a chance of getting through the board, and he says, yeah, he says, I think this is the current board. This is the only chance in a generation we're going to have to actually get it to the point where the people can vote on it.
Boy, that'd be great. If you could do
That would be.
Need that lever to move heaven and earth on this one.
Well, we'll see what happens. Vinnie Stark abstained on the whole issue of the legislative. He wants to hear from the people first. They might have present us with good reasons why we should keep the present Board of Supervisors. I said, can you think of one? In other words, if you were starting off fresh,
if you set up like this,
if you didn't have to deal with the fact that the people who have to vote on it at first are the people who are abolishing their own positions, if you take the political aspect out of it, can you think of a good reason why you would keep the current system? I mean, the current system was put into effect before there was one man, one vote requirement, and it was done. Essentially, the town supervisors get together, and there weren't these huge county issues. There weren't, there'd be a poorhouse. They would meet a couple times a year in those days. You didn't have the road patrols and all these things. Government got very big in between. You didn't have Medicaid.
That takes a big part out of the budget.
Yeah, and actually no brains to manage because they have no say, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I've talked enough. Let's see. So Misha did a funeral today. Is that?
Yeah. And next, he got a big parade Saturday up at Kingsbury, which is right next to Queensbury.
Right next to Queensbury.
Yeah, they've got a big anniversary parade up there doing Saturday, and next Saturday on the 12th, he's got a interment service up at St. Mary's Cemetery to play. So he's being busy and earning some money so he can have better food when we go to Scotland. So
very good.
He's earned his plane.
Well, you're going to eat nothing but haggis when you get over there, aren't you?
I hope we can eat more than haggis. I'm going to tell you that. Because I believe, from experience, I think haggis is the reason the Scots left Scotland.
And came here.
And came here. Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. Which is also the same reason that the Irish left Ireland because of the corned beef.
The corned beef was better over here?
They were hoping there wasn't going to be any corned beef over there.
No, that's nonsense. They didn't have corned beef in Ireland. They didn't have beef at all.
That's right. I belong to the Brits.
Do you ever read well, you must have read Angela's Ashes by now, haven't you, Frank McCourt?
No.
Huh?
No.
Oh, it's a good read. Fabulous writing style.
I've never read that.
Anyway, he was talking about, he's alive, and he's talking about growing up poor in Ireland and how on Easter they would have the only meat they had in the year, and that would be like a calf's head or something like that. That was it. That's the meat they got was what nobody else wanted.
Yeah.
And that was a delicacy for them. They would probably love the haggis or however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even know.
My wife likes it, but
really,
it's got liver and oats and other organ meat in it. No.
Well, it does have liver. You got that far? Is that sophisticated? I thought it was just like intestines and
it's stuff.
Stuff. Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
You take all the stuff together and you make a fancy name for it, and people think it's something.
And it's
Oh, and next Wednesday they have the middle school talent show is going to be up at Amsterdam High School. So if you want to hear a bagpipe solo, go up to the talent show next Wednesday night. So
that'll be in the
at Amsterdam High School. They're playing.
Amsterdam High School in the Bertha Rose Theater.
Bertha Rose Theater, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. What a great place that is in there. What a change from.
Well, it is. It is. It really.
cousin.
The acoustics are so much better now, and the whole atmosphere is better.
When they did the original, basically they put the acoustics in backwards because the people in the back of the theater could not hear the people on the stage, but the people on the stage could hear the people in the back talk, chatter. I mean, that's why you shut up. There's no way to hear. But now it's acoustics is the way it's supposed to be, and it's comfortable, it's well lit, and doesn't flood.
You know, I remember in the
That's the key.
That's the key. Oh yeah.
In the olden days, I remember talking to Bert when they were first planning the school. It may not even been when they were planning it for up there. It might have been when they were planning it for the river or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
I think it was even before he was principal. When he maybe still just a drama teacher at the school. That's how long ago this was. When the first plans were going in there, he was talking to me about, you know, they'd come the plans for the theater at the new school, and it was going to be perfect. It was going to be to his specifications. They were going to have a revolving stage. There was going to be the most acoustically perfect theater in the world and everything. And then, of course, by the time they got around to building it, it wasn't, and it ended up with the what I call the Gus Grissom effect.
Lowest bidder, huh?
Yeah. Gus Grissom, of course, was the second American astronaut into space after Alan Shepard, and the reporter asked him afterwards, "How did you feel sitting on top of that Redstone rocket?" He says, "Well, to tell you the truth, I looked around me and said to myself, everything I see was built by the lowest bidder." So the first iteration of the New Amsterdam High School auditorium was god awful. The acoustic, the sound from the stage dropped dead at the stage line. It absolutely dropped dead. If you could be heard at all, you had to be way up front, stage front, and yelling. Because anything behind that invisible line just was absorbed, even if you were speaking loudly.
But if you sat in that front seat, your feet might get wet.
That's right, because of the drainage
or lack thereof.
Yeah. I mean, there were, you would have the sump pump going off in the middle of a show.
Yeah. You could see the
line. Yeah. Because when it broke down, which happened more than once, that filled right up.
Yeah.
2 or 3 feet. Because that was. Well,
they took care of the drainage when they
anyway,
rebuilt that.
It's a much better theater now, more comfortable, better designed all the way around.
Yep.
And the kids still do a wonderful job. God bless them.
Yes, they do.
And Bill Nelson and his drama club, and Stephanie and her orchestra or her band.
Yeah.
Not going to be the same without her, is it?
No, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. I mean, she was there a long time, and she, in all honesty, there is nobody that puts in more hours than the people from the music department. Mike Perry, Patty Valiente, and Stephanie Boyce. Whatever their stipend is for doing those things beyond teaching.
They didn't nowhere near what the work they're putting in for it.
If they paid them double, they'd still be underpaid, because they are, truly, when football season starts, the marching band starts. When football season's over, the rest of the additional music programs go on. Right now, they're getting ready for outdoor competitions. They just finished up NISMA. They just finished up, the competitions. They go all year long, and 99% of that stuff takes place after school. And
and they're usually off to every other year they make a major
somebody
trip.
Goes.
Yeah.
Every year somebody goes.
Yeah. Either the chorus or the band on alternate years.
So any kid who gets involved in the music program as a 9th grader, if they're just doing one portion of that, you've got 2 trips you're going to go on in your high school career. You're part of both. You go every year someplace.
Right.
And there's not many schools that can claim that. And it's tough when they go up against Gitterland and Niskayuna and Shen, because those bands, you got all those kids take private lessons.
And you know what?
We
clobber them every time, because there's nothing like it wherever you go. We go play football in Albany. We bring our band down because nobody else has got one. You got,
That's right.
I mean, you can't imagine how many kids go to Albany High, and you go down to Bleecker Stadium, and the band, the cheerleaders, the majorettes is all ours.
Yeah.
And the whole Amsterdam side is filled, and the Albany side there's a handful of people. It's like they're the visitors.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
They
It's
do,
amazing.
They do a great job, and it's a great source of pride,
And you know,
as it should be.
the
for-
school has a great
As it should
following.
be, and anything that promotes excellence in the children, I am in favor of, and culture.
They do an excellent job here in the city. They really
You
do.
know, so we do have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah.
And when you're on the school board, we'll be even prouder, Gavin.
We'll see. There's 3 people, 2 spots, and somebody's gonna get left out. And the
Yeah.
people need to vote who they
They'll
believe to
probably-
be
they'll
best job,
probably
and
give you-
that's fine.
They'll
And that's
give
what
you
they should
2
do.
spots. They'll give you 2 spots.
Yeah, we'll give you 2
I can be
spots.
twice as busy. No, it'll be interesting to see how the people go, and
Yes.
however the people vote is how they vote. Yeah, no problem with that at all.
All right, I think that's enough for this week. I think we're meeting again next week. I think the Louisa's graduation's the following week, but I'm not sure.
Use your email, let us know.
Yes, and probably I'll link Louisa's project presentation on the
Yes,
on
I'd
the
like to
website
see
too.
that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
I don't know if it's been posted yet, but yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of her.
I'd like to see that.
That's a
All
good
right.
thing.
So, there's Jim Nikosha, there's Gavin Murdoch, our next school board member, and I'm Bob Going, and I'm not running for anything. And we'll see you all next week with more of the show with no name.